Okay, that's good. And then we should also have Matthew here as well. So hopefully you should be able to see and hear him. So let's just check that. Oh, here we go. I think he's just loading up.
Yeah.
So Matthew, do you want
Hopefully
to check
that's
we can
working.
hear you?
Yeah, just checking that everyone can hear me. Just say thanks on the chat box. Good.
Okay, brilliant. So I think we're ready to start. So Matthew is going to be speaking through this presentation. Just as a brief introduction, Matthew will be speaking about opening our new premises. So throughout the presentation, please feel free to enter your comments in the chat box, and then we'll try and answer those as we go along. So over to you, Matthew.
Okay, good afternoon, folks. Thank you very much for your interest in this. I haven't done anything like this before, so I hope that it'll all be okay. Any questions that you want to ask, please put them into the chat box, and we'll stop at various places throughout, and Tim will then ask questions and I'll do answer them. So just to start off with, a little bit of background about us. We're a small family business based in Sussex, and it was first established by my parents in 1992. And similarly to many funeral businesses, we worked for small village undertakers, town undertakers, that were then taken over by Dignity in the late 80s. The response to that was a period of working for various other people and then opening our own business in 1992. So it's quite a long time ago. My parents opened their first funeral office in Haywards Heath, and it's the photograph just up on the top right there. We then, a similar thing happened to my business partner, Paul Bowley, who some of you will know, and we joined forces with him and opened a second office in Hassocks in 1998, trading as Bowley Funeral Service. A little bit more recently, in 2010, I joined the family business after time working in Australia and in London for many years. And it coincided with us opening a third premises in Burgess Hill in 2010, which is the bottom right-hand picture there. We, this year in April 2006, opened our fourth and final office in Brighton, so a little bit different for us. It's a much bigger city rather than a small town or a village. And we opened it under both names of Bowley and Gallagher. Just moving on, for anyone who doesn't know, this is where we actually are. So Brighton, right in the middle of the screen there, is on the coast. What you have surrounding the city is the South Downs National Park. So that bit around sort of Withdean, Stanmer, is all downs. There's nothing there, and it's quite a big natural barrier. And just north of there, you'll see Hassocks, which is where Bowley's is, Burgess Hill, which is where our second P&S Gallagher office is, and Haywards Heath to the north of that. Looking a bit further north, you've got Crawley and Gatwick Airport. So that's where we're located, and really pointing out the difference between, you know, being quite rural, Brighton being a much bigger city, but with this big barrier of the national park in between the other three offices and the one in Brighton in the city. We have not really stood still as a business. We've always looked at growth opportunities. So I thought I'd put a little bit of background in about some of the things that we had done to expand and grow our business successfully from being a very small startup through to what we have now. We do about 350 funerals a year, and we're chasing the elusive 400. But we've done various things over the years to enhance and grow the business, some of it successful, some of it not. So very quickly, J&R Matthews and William Collins are the original businesses that my dad worked for in Cuckfield and Burgess Hill. They were taken over by Dignity in 1989. The relevance to this really is that we had existing contacts, friends, associates, families that we'd worked with those businesses for many years when we opened Haywards Heath in 1992. So we had existing you know, we were a known force, and I think that's the case for a lot of funeral directors. So that we opened Haywards Heath and had an existing client base. The business grew very, very quickly and did well up to about 150, between 150 and 180 funerals a year, dependent on other factors like competition, demographics, death rates, etc. The second office was opened in Hassocks, as I said. Paul Bowley, we had known for many years, or Mum and Dad had known for many years. Paul worked in Brighton, again, it's a story of businesses being taken over by Dignity. He eventually ended up working at Frank Davey in Hurstbeer Point, which is a village just to the north of Brighton, next door to Hassocks. They also were taken over by Dignity, we decided to go into business together. We didn't open in Hurstbeer Point right opposite Davies. We opened in the next village over, which is Hassocks, which is a bit bigger, a bit newer. It's got an interesting set of demographics. There's lots of people whose families originated in Brighton, but also mid Sussex and a little bit of London, who moved into you know, housing there as it was built in the 40s and 50s and 60s. So there's a fairly old population there by comparison to the other two towns. We moved there because Ditchling is another village to another side of it. On the opposite side of Hassocks is Hurstbeer Point. So it's a series of villages at the foot of the Downs that is really where the business is concentrated there. We also went into business, into a venture with a couple called Adrian and Diane Pink, and a funeral office was opened up near Caterham in Hamsey Green. That was a bit distant for us in the end. It was quite a long way away from our base in Haywards Heath, so the logistics of sharing vehicles and that sort of thing were not quite so easy. We ended up moving out of that business, but it was a successful venture for us financially at the time, and it enabled us to do other things. What has happened in the meantime? Lots of stories that will be familiar to people. We've had competitors open up in Haywards Heath. You know, we've had former employees open up in the town as well. You know, we've seen Bowley's develop in Hassocks and do really nearly all of the work in Hassocks, Hurstbeer Point and Ditchling, and the surrounding smaller villages. Frank Davies doing very little, so we're sort of at saturation point there, with between 150 and 170 funerals a year. What else has happened? Burgess Hill is the town in between Haywards Heath and Hassocks. It's a growing town. If you ask anyone who lives there, they'll say it's growing. Ever more charity shops, estate agents, nail bars and funeral directors. What we've seen similarly to Haywards Heath is some changes within the family businesses there, people reopening businesses after buyouts, and Co-op have come to both towns, both Haywards Heath and Burgess Hill, in very prominent town centre positions. So from both of the towns having 2 or 3 funeral directors, they now have 4 or 5. So I think it's something that's been replicated in a lot of small towns and a lot of communities where we're just seeing more and more and more buyouts by Dignity and openings by Co-op, and an increasing number of funeral directors plus independents, you know, opening as well. It's meant that actually expansion and development and growth in the towns is really quite difficult. Every funeral is very hard fought for. And our response to that has been to look at other options. So in Burgess Hill, you know, had other funeral directors whose businesses have been bought not opened up, we would have had opportunities for a lot of ongoing growth. They have opened up again, so we've got a little bit less. So, you know, it's a growing business, but not growing at a really rapid rate. We then had involvement with something called the Peacebound Project as well. This was a project trying to build and develop a crematorium in Sussex, which ultimately didn't work out, but took up a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of money and so on and so forth. We, because of all of those factors, established that, you know, we would like to open one more office, and we needed to work out where that was. So we looked at Eastbourne down the coast, Worthing down the coast. We looked at Cowfold, which is a more rural location, but we settled on North Brighton because of its proximity to our current operations and because of what we saw as the real potential for growth, and I'll come on to that. Just to whisk through a couple of slides, that's who we are, just in case any of you have met us or know us, or want to throw things at us next time you see us. and this is the wider team just before we open the office in Brighton at the Christmas New Year time. Any questions, really?
Yep. So if anyone's got any questions at this point, we'll just take a few seconds, and we'll just if you would like to type any questions in the box, then yeah, Matthew can answer those before we move on. No, I don't think so, not for the time being. So should we carry on, Matthew?
Okay, great. Just in terms of sort of looking at funeral directing in Brighton, for us, as I've said, it was a new place. It's somewhere where Paul grew up. I went to college here. I live in Brighton now. But we needed to do a bit of research, and a lot of this is just stuff that we know, and don't underestimate the importance of the things that you know or that other people in the trade and industry know. The history is quite important because it dictates what there is out there in terms of competition, and we found it quite interesting when we started really looking at it and talking at it, working out why things were the way they were in Brighton, and what made it a good opportunity for us, we hope. So to give you a little bit of background, Woodvale Cemetery was established in 1857, like lots of the other big civic ones, and the two big chapels there were converted into crematoria in 1930. So really quite early, and burial land in Brighton is at a premium. There isn't much around. The Downs Crematorium opened as a private crematorium adjacent to Woodvale in Bear Road. They're literally next door to each other on the two sites, cremation became a very popular option within the city. Burial did continue as well, and it was mainly in large cemeteries surrounding those crematoria chapels right through until the early 21st century. So it's pretty central. It's right in the city, but it's very, very leafy. It's very green. It's a very large area, and people are surprised by how tranquil it is, but also how central it is. Brighton itself is built on a series of narrow valleys, deans and hills, so it's quite a steep city. Funeral directors clustered therefore on the Lewis Road, which was the main road out to the east, for easy access to the crematoriums and to the cemeteries, for horse-drawn hearses at that point. So they were all clustered together in this one part of the city, so there's not a geographical spread at all. And Brighton's like half a city because of course the other half of it is in the sea. So all of the central bit is actually pretty much along the coast road, which makes traffic a bit of a nightmare.
So just to pop in there, we've had a couple of questions come through. So first of all, Amy's asking if the 350 to 400 funerals are across your 4 offices.
Yes, they are. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, this is just to give you an idea of what Brighton looks like. So on the top left-hand corner, those are the downs that we go over if we're going in between the Brighton office and other offices, and they're pretty steep. And then the rest of it is all this terracing. And the bottom left-hand picture there, actually you can just see in the bottom left-hand corner, that is the start of the sort of cemetery area. So just to give you a bit of an idea of it. So the wheres and whys, these are the maps that show where the funeral directors are, and in the top right hand one, just to show you, this big clustering is the Lewis Road, and that's where the majority of funeral directors are. We're right in the middle, and we're looking to serve the northern portion of the city, and then there's also Hove, and that's blown up on the left hand side to show that there are lots of funeral directors in that western and very residential part of the city. What we wanted to do was find the strategic gap, and we think we found it in the north. This bit, people don't live in the southern central bit of the city; they live in all of the bits around the edge of it, really. So that shows where we are, and it shows where everybody is on the Lewis Road within the actual city. Hove is the bit out to the west, so it's a little bit different. So hopefully that gives an indication that this busy bit all round here, down in the bottom half of it, where you can see one after another is the Lewis Road. We're looking to serve the residential area to the centre and the top of the map.
Matthew, so another interesting question come through from Andrea. She's asking about if you have your own sort of fleet of vehicles, and at what point is getting your own fleet worthwhile, i.e. how many funerals?
It's a really good question and a really hard one to answer, because yes, we do have it. We've got a hearse and 2 limousines. Obviously, our area is getting larger, but it's not really, because the crematoria are in Brighton and Crawley. So by having a Brighton office, although we're doing some more funerals, we go to Brighton a lot from Haywards Heath and Burgess Hill, and most of the funerals from Hassocks go to Brighton. So I'd say it is worthwhile for us. We're certainly looking at trimming down a limousine, because we've got a hearse 2 and probably going to hearse 1, maybe ending up in a situation where we'll have 2 hearses and 1 car. We garage them in Haywards Heath, which is right at the top of our area, that's fine with premises we're in at the moment. But one of the issues for us is the cost of having somewhere to put them. In Brighton city centre, within Brighton, it's certainly not viable, because the square footage is much too high. But we can do it a little bit more cheaply north of the Downs. So I think there's so many things to consider. We're always tempted to go, well, should we get rid of 1 limb, get rid of 2 limbs, should we hire in everything? But we do have hearse 2 and have done for a number of years. Thinking of going to hearse 1, so that's where we are at the moment. Sorry, the competition, that's what I was going to do. I've bounced on, but talking about Brighton itself, most of it is in the Lewis Road or in Hove. There are a couple in the city centre, but everything looks a bit like this. So there's very little independent competition. We've got independent colleagues in Wagstaffs in Kemp Town who are in the far east of the city. We've got them in Bungards, Richard at Bungards in the far further west in Hove. There used to be Derrimon and Haynes in Patcham, and I'll come on to that because that's right in the north of the city. But really that is it. And Phil and Sally Evans again over in Hove, and they've opened a little operation in Brighton as well now. But there are loads and loads and loads of names in Brighton that are owned, by CPJ Field or by Co-op or by Dignity. And what we've got here is a city that is very forward-looking and very independently minded, but actually the funeral sector is completely dominated by the corporates. And that's just a little selection there of what are many, many shop fronts that are owned by those big 3 players. And that's another reason why we found it attractive, was because we can differentiate ourselves from the lot. And they've had a real monopoly. There's also a little bit where actually the Co-op opened 200 yards from my door in the 2 towns we traded in forever, and whose competition is now the Co-op on London Road, which is the one on the bottom right-hand side there. And it's kind of bringing ourselves into their world as well, seeing as they're very present in ours now. So we're looking in Brighton, the things that that affected where we were the National Park and the beach, because it's a barrier to the north and a barrier to the south. So you've got kind of half a city to look at. I've talked a little bit about the lack of independent funeral directors. So we sniffed a gap. There are lots of places. The Lewis Road is a cheap part of town. They don't need to be there anymore, but they've stayed there because they always have been there, because they're owned by big corporates who aren't going to invest in it. And they sit there with a cheap rent, so you can get a kebab, you can get your nails done, and you can get a funeral. But most of the people in North Brighton who are trying to arrange a funeral would probably rather not go to the Lewis Road to do it. And that's what I mean by looking at a lack of independence in the city, and then maybe a bit of a lack of investment. As we know, we need A1 retail. There's hardly any in north of Preston Circus in Brighton, which is a bit south of us. So everything's focused in the centre of the city for retail and down towards the beach. It's really hard to find A1 retail with rear entrance in Brighton, and we really, really struggled. We found one of only 6 viable properties in the whole of the north of the city, so we grabbed it, and that's where I'm sitting today. So that was really difficult, and that has as well, it's not just a lack of investment on other people's parts and competitors' parts, there's actually not the premises here. So it's quite difficult to move into what is predominantly a very, very residential area, but we've done it. Derrimon and Haynes were in the north of the city, in Patcham, and were purchased by Dignity probably about 12 months before we opened here. So we felt that opened up a gap in the market as well, with Andy and Melanie selling up, because there was no independent in this part of the city at all. So we wanted to look at what we thought Brighton was about and how we fitted in, really. And those are some of the reasons why we opted for Brighton as opposed to other places. So this is what it looks like. It's a bit quirky. It's very bright. It's a bit independent. The demographics aren't that good. It's quite young. you know, so it doesn't scream open funeral directors like Eastbourne or Worthing does. So it's a bit quirky. You can see there the Brighton Fringe, the Brighton Pride Festival. There's lots of art, lots of politics going on here, lots of graffiti. It's quite a vibrant place, and we wanted to do something. It's very independently minded. That's why I showed this slide. It was declared the People's Republic of Brighton and Hove when at the last general election half of it voted Green and the other half voted Labour, and everything else in the whole of the kind of rest of the county voted Conservative. So they dubbed it the People's Republic of Brighton and Hove. So we think an independent funeral director fits here for that reason, because people you know, have those kinds of views. This is what it says about the North Lane, which is a central area in town, about independent trading. So there's a real kind of strong independent trading ethos here, and about individuality and vibrancy and modernity and being a little bit different. Yet we've got a really corporate funeral sector. So we wanted to shake it up a little bit and try and key into this sort of identity and this way people think about Brighton. There are the demographics. Population by age. As I said, it's not terrible, but it's not great from the funeral perspective. You know, there are 250,000 people living here, and we know about the demographics because of doing the crematorium project. So that gave us confidence to say, well, from the Peacebound project, we know the death rate isn't spectacular in Brighton, but we know it's good enough. We know there's an attitude about independent trading and identity, and being a bit different and alternative in Brighton. And one of our competitors that I haven't mentioned is a company called ARPA, which was set up a good few years ago by a group of women really focused on alternative funerals, and they've got a very good, strong niche in the city. You know, so we know there's a thirst for difference and independence and independent identities. Patcham is predominantly bungalows, right in the northern part of the city. Similar to Hassock, so we knew that there was a community in the right sort of age. Preston Park, which is the immediate area, lots and lots of apartments here. So again, we know the demographics are going to work. There's lots and lots of flats, lots of retirement complexes. There's also masses and masses of tree line trees and chimney pots. You know, so it's quite diverse, but the socioeconomics are quite high actually. We've also got quite a lot of nursing care along the Dyke Road, just on the edge of our area, and through into Patcham and parts of Preston Park. So we know we've got enough. Looking at it, and that was a big factor as well. We wanted to open an office that could do a really good number of funerals, rather than bottom out at 60 or suddenly find that the market's really tight and so on and so forth. Any other queries on questions or anything, Tim? I think we can stop at that point.
So there's been a bit of a discussion about whether you should hire your vehicles or if you should buy them sort of outright. So I was wondering what your thoughts were on this, Matthew. Sort of the pros and cons of buying or hiring.
No. Okay, moving on then. In terms of business planning, we put some really basic numbers down, and this slide's just an illustration of that. So we looked at what we thought the costs were going to be. We found some premises. We looked at cost of lease, refurbishment, which is substantial, and you'll see in a minute why. We looked at staffing costs for the first 12 months, marketing, insurances, printing and stationery, utilities, phones, business rates, clothing, so on and so forth, and put it all together, and we came up with a budget of about 164 grand ish. What we did was went to the bank and saw what we could get, basically, because borrowing's cheap at the moment, and we funded it through a loan. So there it is. That's where we chose. We tried to get the freehold. The freeholder wouldn't sell it, so we ended up going lease. We had a great big debate over whether we could get the whole property or the ground floor only. We really wanted control of all of it. We couldn't get it, or we could have done, but only with running the flats pretty much at a loss, which we weren't prepared to do. So, you know, we would like to have had control of the building. We'd have liked to have had control of the 2 flats above it, but it didn't end up working out like that. So we ended up compromising and doing a lease agreement for the ground floor. So that's how it looked when we took it over. And this is what it looked like inside, just to give you an idea. So it was in quite a bad state. There was ceilings falling down. It stank. Nobody had been in it for a year or two. And we went in and basically ripped out the whole of the interior. So we started to build, and we went in and designed it, looked at a floor plan, and there's just a few images there of you know, what we did, and we basically took out absolutely everything except for the retaining walls, and out and built all of our office and chapel and embalming room, and we've got this big sort of flexible space in the middle, and we designed it all and built it all from the ground up, rather than trying to use anything existing. Anybody got anything they want to ask at that point at all?
I think there's just a bit of a conversation going on still about things sort of co-ops moving in.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you heard earlier about the vehicles, whether you should purchase them or hire them.
And I think it's a really difficult one. As I said earlier on, it's something, you know, we agonise over. I think lots of funeral directors do. We're never sure whether we're doing the right thing or not. We've got vehicles, we've not got finance on anymore, but the next thing we do, we will need finance. You know, I think we'll certainly, as I said before, get rid of our second limb, and just run with a Hearst and One, and see how we go from there. In terms of the co-op, you know, I know people have been saying about that. We've certainly, you know, I think we certainly have lost some work to them, because they've got big high street sites, and they're doing work. They're not doing what we would say is enough. We couldn't open and do the amount of work that they're doing and carry on operating, but they can, and they will, I think.
Matthew, can I ask, from your experience, is there, I suppose, a family's sort of traditions change in terms of whether they would like the kind of the vehicles, or are people preferring perhaps different coloured vehicles? Is black still the most common, or people now going for silver? Just sort of from your experience, what the kind of current trends are, I suppose. From,
sure.
You've seen.
I'd love to go silver, except for the fact that Co-op have in Brighton, so I can't. Otherwise, you know, there's no point now. We run black. In our other 3 businesses, they're quite traditional. So you know, we don't have a lot of. It's quite rare we have horses even. Brighton, we've not done enough yet to know, but we're certainly seeing lots of interest in things like direct cremation. I can see Andrew Button, why silver rather than black? I think really, just because, you know, we would like to be a little bit different here. You know, we think we can get away with it. We think it does work. We'd like to stand out. So, you know, when we look at uniform, we'll look at doing something a little bit different with that, I think. You know, other than that, you know, it's sorry, I've lost my thread. Beg your pardon. I'm looking in 2 places at once, and it's really difficult. Silver and black vehicles, yes. I would consider silver vehicles for doing something a little bit different, but I won't now, because the Co-op locally have done that.
Okay. No, it's very interesting. Everyone there has got different. I think black seems to be the most common, just looking at the conversations. But yeah, who knows? Okay.
And just moving on, we looked at issues around branding, really, and looking at the premises as they were. We're right on a really busy junction on the A23, so we wanted the premises to be an advert, and you know, we're spending a lot on them, so we wanted to try and get some advertising out of that money rather than having to spend it in the paper as well. So they're very light, they're very bright, they're very open, and there's lots of glass. So it's a bit like a goldfish bowl sitting here, but we do really get noticed. And the funerals that we've done now, I would say over half of them talk about, our clients have talked about our location, about the colour of the outside, about being visible, about being able to look inside, and all those sorts of things. So it has worked. And in rush hour, we get, I don't know how many thousands of cars straight past the front door. It's probably one of the busiest road junctions in Sussex. We've used flowers for bits of our branding and that sort of thing in the other offices, and we wanted to get away from that and use something architectural, because we saw Brighton as a city and as the architectural sort of side of things being quite interesting here, with things like the seafront and the Royal Pavilion and all that. We wanted it to be light and bright and comfortable and warm and colourful and all those sorts of things. Brighton's a big arty town, so we wanted to use local artwork in here, which we have done. And there's also in the middle of it a big space, which we wanted to retain as a space. We can actually hold a service here in that space. It's not a service chapel because it's part of the office, so it's quite hard to explain, but I'll show you some pictures. But that was another thing with this new office. So we were looking to do something quite different, because everything else was all your very standard Co-op and Dignity frontages. It's all half curtains and a memorial in the window and something about the Legion, and you know, it's all just very standard. So we want it to be a bit different. This is what our other offices look like. So this is where we came from, if you like, in terms of the way that we did our interiors. That's what we have in other places. The two on the left are Haywards Heath, the two on the right are Bow this is our branded stationery. So for Bowleys in Hassocks, there's a memorial brochure on the left. There's one for P&S Gallagher with it. So you can see there's sort of orchids on the Gallagher one, and there's bluebells on the Bowleys one, which is this sort of flower idea, and that's what our branding's been like before. So I wanted to do something that fitted in but was different and more architectural. So that's what our graphics company came up with for Brighton, and we ended up, you know, saying please look at a load of architectural drawings and things of Brighton and turn them different colours and things and see what we thought of it all. So we couldn't get away from this because it was too big an icon, really. And for anyone who doesn't know it, it's the Royal Pavilion, which is George IV's pleasure palace in the middle of Brighton. And we have used it on all of our stationery. So we've ended up with something that looks like that, basically. And it's in sort of grey and silver and those sorts of colours. And then we've just built other ideas onto it in layers for the brand. So this is that's the front of our general funeral brochure on the left. On the right hand side is the you know, that's our price list. So that's what they look like. And again, it's this idea of architecture, and we've gone for kind of drawing type stuff. It's a little bit wispy and a bit flyaway. This is a woman called Harriet Butler, who does these brilliant drawings of these buildings in Brighton. So that's her take on the Royal Pavilion. I hope you can see it okay, and we've got a big print of it in this. So we use that as a strong starting point, and we bought 3 of her prints. That spent far more money on what we've hung up in the office than anything in my own house. So here's the other 2. That's the bandstand on the beach, and then this one is actually the Duke of York's Art Cinema, which is in Preston Park, just around the corner from the office. So we just thought that they were a bit different and a bit fun, and we didn't want it to look like a funeral director's. So people have said it looks a bit more like an art gallery than a funeral director's. So we thought that was kind of nice. That's what it looks like at the front now. And again, we chose this sort of so we chose this kind of peppermint colour, and that's what you can see out of the window is that dirty great big tree. So that's our view out on the opposite, and the park goes you know, for a good half a mile into Brighton on the other side of the road. So that's what the front of the premises look like now. We've just kept it fairly simple, but it's all kind of peppermint green and silver and grey, basically. We wanted to avoid, obviously, burgundy, lavender, yada yada yada, what people are used to seeing in the town. So this is the reception area, and this is what we've put in it. So in the bottom you can see the framed picture. That's the one of the pavilion that I showed you from Harriet's. We've got some quite different funky looking chairs. We've stretched some fabric over canvas to go along the back wall. under lights. We've got some recessed lighting, which we can change the colour of at the top. And at the other end, we've got a big window that looks out onto the park. On the bottom left corner there is a clock, which was in Swan's Undertakers in Loughborough in 1915, when my father, 1915, they'll kill me, when he was 15, and my father started his apprenticeship as a funeral director, and that clock was in the kitchen at the Undertakers there. So we've got a little bit of history there as well. So that would have been in 1962 or something. You know, there are things we've carried with us, and that have become a little bit of a conversation piece, really, when people want something to talk about other than death. We can have a service, as I said, and this is this area at the back. And the idea is it's quite flexible. It will seat up to about 18. I think 12 is really comfortable. We have got pressure for afternoon funeral services at our crematoria here. You know, if we've got a really small funeral service where there's only a small family, you know, we can, you know, we can do that. This is our arranging room. So I've just seen a question from Keith about the seating area being a bit loud. I think you're right. That's an area really in the reception and in this space that we can use for other things. This is our arranging room that's on the screen now, which is much more muted. You know, as Andrea said there, I think it's really bright, and we try to do that with the loud, funky chairs. In terms of arranging a funeral, we've gone much more muted, and that's what's on the screen now. So I hope that you know, that makes sense. We've got the two different areas. Home Sense, Paul Kappa. I don't know is the answer. We ended up getting them at a place in North Street in Brighton, and I can't think what they're called. It's a number, 13 or 13 North Street or 14 North Street, something like that. So that's where we are.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Lots of discussions here about sort of different use of colours in that sort of welcome area. I suppose from your experience, Matthew, from families who have visited, is that something they quite like, that kind of welcoming sort of area with the bright colours? Or
we've had some really nice feedback about it. We've had people who really like it. We've had a couple of people who say I can't stand it, or not I can't stand it, but they've gone, you know, oh actually I don't really like those chairs. They don't have to sit in them or look at them, though. That's I suppose is the point with it. But it's been more positive than not, and what we've had from nearly all of our clients is that they find the whole ambience of the place really attractive, because it's light and bright. It's not dark or oppressive. We don't have lots of you know, I don't know. We didn't want it to feel like a funeral director's, because we didn't think that that's what people in Brighton wanted, and the feedback, you know, has agreed with us on that. They've said it's really nice coming in here, it's really relaxing, it's a really nice place to come and sit. I feel really comfortable talking here. I really like the interior, the artwork's really interesting, you know, whatever it may be. So it has worked. Yeah. And Andrew's saying, what does a funeral director's look and feel like then? The answer is I don't know, because they're all so different. I mean, when I was a little lad, there were quite big desks and kind of vaguely creepy old men inhabiting the places, but you know, that was 1970 whatever. I don't know, but people say it doesn't. And here, a funeral director's looks like the outside of Dignity branch that hasn't been decorated for the last 8 years. Bluntly, that's what they look like in Brighton, and that's what we're sort of you know, wanting to contrast with, if that makes sense.
An interesting point from Keith. Just before you move on, Matthew, saying about ensuring the seating area is acceptable for perhaps older people, to make sure they're not too low or sort of too soft for them, so making sure they're all encompassing. So I suppose
I'm really sorry, I've turned the volume down and I'm struggling to get it back up. There we go. Sorry, Tim.
That's okay. Just Keith highlighting that seating area should be acceptable for perhaps sort of older people in terms of not being too low or too soft.
Yeah.
So I suppose something you have to consider as well for people of all sort of ages and needs.
Yes, certainly. And in these chairs are very high, the coloured ones, so they are good for older people. And on a similar but different note, You know, everything has been designed so that it's completely wheelchair accessible. We're all on one level. We've got full access through to full disabled bath, you know, toilet and washroom facilities and everything as well. You know, so you do need to be compliant with all these things now. You know, we found out, and we are, you know, and I think we can accommodate people of all ages. We had the lady in from the Alzheimer's Society who was really pleased with our loo in terms of it. You know, its accessibility and also its acceptability to people who may have a dementia diagnosis and that sort of thing. You know, we've got the right colours in there, the right type of seating, etc. So all of that is important. Absolutely. Okay. Just some more pictures, really, just to give an idea of what we've ended up with. So our viewing room, we've gone for something a bit local with the wood cut there. It's fairly light and bright. It's silvery, goldy kind of coloured curtains, and we've opted to make it non-denominational, and we can adapt it as people want, which seems to have been the right decision for where we are. Just a little bit of a look backstage. We've got full embalming facilities, which was important to us as a business. I think one of the things that we don't like the idea of is people being, you know, transported all over the place into facilities and centralised facilities. So out of our 4 offices, 3 of them have embalming rooms, and we embalm in all 3 locations, and this is the newest one here in Brighton. So we designed it all and had it custom built to come in here. It was quite a big investment, but we wanted to be able to, for this office to be self-sufficient without moving our people around all over the place. We'd rather move the embalmer here and have them embalm here than have people, you know, schlepped up and down the motorway. So that's that one. Just seen Paul, the Golden Charter advert in the mortuary. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That photo was taken at the opening. So yes, it would have been a little bit late. Thank you for that. Going on, and John, viewing room and not a chapel of rest. I think really it's just an either or. It's the phrase that we've used because it's less denominational, really. You know, but it can feel just, you know, it is a chapel of rest as well. That's our website. If anybody wanted to have a look at it, I can't click onto it on the presentation here. But we ended up making the choice of having a new website for Brighton. So we have 3 different brands, which can be a bit cumbersome. We've got Bowley & Gallagher, Bowley Funeral Service, and P&S Gallagher. Anybody who does kind of what's it called? You know, all the pay-per-click stuff and all this sort of thing, and does all the search engine optimization. They all think we're completely insane. They don't understand that a brand isn't a brand; it's also a business. And if we changed Bowley Funeral Service to Bowley & Gallagher, or P&S Gallagher to Bowley & Gallagher, all of our people, all of the local people in our community would think that we sold. But try explaining that to somebody who does digital marketing for a living, who just thinks that you're a nutter to having 3 brands. So we have that one. We also have Bowley Funeral Service. We also have P&S Gallagher. Tim's laughing at me now, I think. He's obviously had those sorts of conversations with people. Looking at the chat box, Mark, what numbers have we achieved so far? It's really, this has been something that's been quite a journey, because we always started from previous business, like I said. So in Haywards Heath, you know, we were established as funeral directors. We then, after the buyout, ended up opening up. The same thing in Hassocks, and in Burgess Hill, it was still a local town, and we were known, and we'd done funerals for Burgess Hill families over the years. Brighton was a completely standing start, so we started from 0. We looked at it. We opened on April the 15th. We targeted it to do 10 before the end of the year. I felt much better when Stan went, oh, well, the Cole would target for 50 in 5 years. So I thought, well, that's okay. We did really nothing for the first 6 weeks, so we all got really nervous. And now on number 14. So actually, we couldn't be happier. I'm really delighted. You know, and if we do 15 before the end of the year, that will really have been 50, you know, that will be a roaring start as far as I'm concerned. Putting them all under one name, Keith is asking about. As I said, my problem with it is that Everyone in Hassocks and Hurst would think that Paul Bowley had sold his business. Everyone in Hayes or Burgess Hill would think Pat Gallagher or Matthew Gallagher had sold their business. So we're sticking with 3 different brands, 3 different names. So Andrea Button, yes, I am working on the same theory as Dignity, except for the fact that there is a Mr. Bowley and there is a Mr. Gallagher, as you well know, my darling. So, is there an issue with price and competition, Mark? I think there is in any town. It just depends. What that issue is. So, for example, in Brighton, there's a chap who does a really affordable funeral. He has to do quite a lot of them. Obviously, because if I was to cut my prices right down, I'd have to do a high volume. I don't want to do that because I don't think that it offers quality. I know when we can offer quality and what the tipping point is, and you will know that as well. I think there's an important point there of finding the right comfort place. I don't think I'm losing work I don't think I'm missing out on work that's going to that really cheap option. It's probably not the work that I most want, but there's a lot of people in Brighton as well. They advertise a lot for this, affordable funeral service on the radio, but there's lots of people who don't want to go to the cheapest as well. And we're not expensive, don't get me wrong. We're a lot cheaper than the corporates are. We're a lot cheaper than the big boys, and I think we're pretty competitive with the other independents in the town. So we're not sort of loads of money. But we're not cheap and cheerful either. So I think that's where pricing sits. I will stick at mine because I think it's a good deal, and I know it's what I know what I need to charge in order to offer the service. I know there was a question on embalming that I can only see a bit of. We do both. We have refrigeration in all of our 4 premises, and we have embalming rooms in 3. So we will do either as is appropriate or as is instructed by the family. An average cremation funeral cost in Sussex, Amy. Okay, so where we are, it's £600 to cremate in Brighton, and it's £999 to cremate in Crawley. So there's a massive difference in cremation fees. That's the first thing. So Chichester and Surrey and Sussex are in the most expensive price bracket in the country. Downs, which is also Dignity, as those other 2 are, is much cheaper because Wood Vale is as well, which is the Wood Vale, which is the council-run one. So they're competitive. So there's a really, really big difference. We've been able to answer John since April the 15th. And there is absolutely no next target whatsoever. I don't plan to open another one ever again, quite frankly.
It's interesting.
So yeah, Paul absolutely agreed, and Andrea 627 in Medway. So yes, we're about the same in Brighton.
I was going to say, Matthew, it's interesting what Keith is saying about making his officers feel more comfortable and not like a funeral director's. Is that sort of a trend then, moving away from that traditional look and feel viewing area to a more modern?
No idea really. It's just what we thought would work here. That's just what we thought would work for us.
Okay.
We did all copy Andrea. That is very true. Dad has lots of input to answer Liam. No, he's not too old school at all. I'd like, actually, for those of you that know him, he picked the chairs. So there you go. So yeah, Mark talking about Norwich, it's exactly the same here. We've got £999 in Crawley and 600 in Brighton.
It's interesting there, again, the use of feedback forms as well. I see Keith there saying that they came back about the comfort of the officers. So I suppose that's a useful way of sort of understanding what I suppose families look for when they do come in. Yeah,
certainly. It's easy to sort of start something. Well, it's not easy, but it's one thing starting something from scratch. It's another thing, kind of, looking at what you've got in existing offices. And fresh eyes are always useful and welcome. I've got just a couple more slides to whiz through because I know we're nearly at the end. So we had an opening. We invited some of the good and the great and some of the people from SAFE. You know, the idea was just to get people to come through the door. And that's a lot of what here has been about, really, is encouraging people to walk in. We do get quite a bit of passing traffic on foot, nothing like by the cars. The cars are unbelievable. There's millions of them. Yeah, and finally, just different things that we've done with marketing. So we have a local glossy A5 that goes out, and one's the Preston Pages, the other's the Patron Post. They have a lot of the same content, but it's they cover two quite small local residential areas for us. They're quite expensive to advertise in, but we've gone for it, and it's monthly, and we have them to give away here as well. And we've advertised in there instead of advertising in the local paper, and I think that's one that, you know, we've all talked between funeral directors about, you know, obituaries in local papers and when you're getting value for money and when you're not. These glossy posted magazines that are local for us and are given out, you know, you can get it at the local Sainsbury's local and here, there and everywhere. About, I think 4 of our clients have mentioned our ad in there out of 14, which makes it worthwhile as far as we can see. We're running pilots in legal services, so we've managed to do a leaflet drop on legal services, and we had an event last night with about 10 attendees on power of attorney. So again, it's about getting people through the door. We've done things previously with the Virtual Dementia Tour and the Alzheimer's Society in other towns, so we've picked that up in Brighton. They're just a dementia friendly town next year, so we're going to partner with the Alzheimer's Society for next year as our charity, and we're going to run the Virtual Dementia Tour as part of that launch in Brighton. The Albion is the local football club. We've joined I'm finally going to a breakfast meeting. I can't believe it. I always said I'd never ever do it, but at least it's in Brighton. Once monthly at the football club. And again, it's looking at something that reaches lots of different types of people without being an advert in the Argus. We've done some bits on Google optimization and social media here as well, which we've not done before, because we always were top front page in the other towns. If you put in funeral director Burgess Hill, we're front page because there's only 5. The same in Hayes Heath, the same in Hassocks, that's the point. Brighton's a bugger because there's like 28 of them, so you're never front page. So we're putting some money into that. We'll see how it goes. We're out, like lots of you, on Sunday. We're going to our local church in Patcham in the very northern area. We've done a nice window with their roll call, and we're involved in that. So we're looking at you know, other things as well. We'd like Crazy Coffins down as part of Brighton Festival in years to come. We'd like to do the vintage car rally with a vintage hearse in years to come. So we're just looking for different, slightly quirky things to do, you know, rather than the things that we know the big boys are doing. But that really is everything from me, I think.
Okay. One more quick question, Matthew, just about you mentioned your website.
Yes.
In terms of families who come to you, do most of them come from the website, or do they still phone, or do they sort of walk in?
I'm a bit rubbish at that. It's a really hard question to answer. I know that the website is increasingly important to lots of our families. We get more web inquiries now than we've ever had. I still think most of our families pick up the phone and ring us initially as the first point of contact, or walk through the door. But whether they've been on Google to find us before that, I just don't know, is the answer. You know, it's a really hard one to know.
Okay. But certainly, I suppose, having that website, because a lot of people we know do search online. So I think the website, you'd say, is quite very important these days. A good.
I think it's very important. I mean, a few years ago when we opened in Burgess Hill, we've spent quite a bit to upgrade our website. And for quite a while, well, I say quite a while, it was probably 6 or 9 months, but it's a long while in website world. We were definitely ahead of the curve. You know, we were a lot better than most of our competitors. We had lots of We had comments from people saying, "I came to you because of your website. I looked at several. I came to you because of it." You know, so I think it is worthwhile, and people do make decisions based on it, and will increasingly. And I think that's the point. Is it's ever more important. You know, we will continue to invest in the websites, and they will change every 2 years.
Okay. So I think that's sort of the whole presentation. Are there any other questions? We've got a couple of minutes. If you've got any more questions to put in the chat box of anything that we've covered, or perhaps something more general you'd like to ask Matthew while he's here. So yeah, and just put your questions in the box, and hopefully we can answer them.
But Keith, do you introduce yourself to residential homes? Yes, I do. Not as much as I should, maybe. Paul and I have had a good go around the local ones. We will get around them again before Christmas. There's quite a lot of them here. What I don't do is I don't endlessly kind of go around loads of them. I mean, there's quite a few in Burgess Hill. There's 4 that I really visit and talk to and work with, because they're the ones that I want to work with, given the choice. We don't have them kind of sewn up, as it were. But yeah, that's a good one. Funeral plans, we do a few. We do the odd pilot scheme, mail drop, but not that many, because we don't tend to get a lot from them. But we do get people coming back. We've gone out into the shopping centres before. It works really well in Burgess Hill, doesn't work so well in Hayes Heath. And those small shopping centres, it's free or it's very cheap. Brighton's hundreds, so I wouldn't touch it. We send information out to our funeral clients about funeral planning. I've also got staff who have a focus on it, so making sure that the follow-ups are done, making sure that things happen efficiently. You know, we offer home visits for funeral planning as well, as I should imagine most of you do. We also have sponsor, you know, bowls events, you know, different charitable events. We advertise plans as opposed to at need. You know, so we'll put a funeral plan advert in. Liam, can I use one of your parking spaces next time I'm down in front for a football match? If I had one, other than the access into the office that we bring bodies in for, you would be welcome to, but I'm afraid I've only got the one, so it would probably interrupt your match.
Mark's also
Safe Charter. Yes, we are Safe Charter. That is both a neon glow and a ginger rinse. No, it's actually ginger. The lights are on red because we've got a window in at the moment for Remembrance Day. So you're getting a bit of a glow, I should imagine.
And then final question from Mark about how you manage your time and logistics between your four different firms.
Right. Yeah. Not very well, my staff would probably say. One factor with it is that I don't have a great deal to do in Hassocks. I'm not ever based there. You know, we're all one company, all part of one team, but really I don't get involved in anything in terms of day-to-day stuff there, and haven't done historically. So that makes it more like 3, which is a bit easier. There is a demand on time. I try and spend time in all 3 of the other offices throughout the week. It depends where is busiest. It depends where I've got funerals going out from. I have a strong focus on Burgess Hill and Brighton as my 2 sort of home offices. But time management is difficult. I try not to come in too early or leave too late as well, and I usually manage it.
Right, so it's just gone past 4 o'clock. So thank you everyone for attending the webinar. I hope you found it helpful. A recording will be put on the SAFE website, so if you want to watch it again or send it to some other colleagues, you'll be able to see that on the member section. But yeah, no, thank you very much, Matthew. It's very interesting. So we'll be in touch about the next webinar.
Okay, hope I didn't bore you all to tears. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.